So where are we today?
We're going to Rock Cemetery in Nottingham. I'm not sure whether you're taking me there to choose my plot.
Headless plot.
Yeah, I'll be in the freezer. It's something that... Bit of a story here, interrolls a story. Keith booked a tour a few months ago at the catacombs, to have a tour of the catacombs at Rock Cemetery, which are apparently really interesting. And we were all set to go, we were about to get into the car, and he checked the dates, and it was the weekend before we should have gone. But you've rebooked it.
Oh, it was the day before.
It was
the Saturday, yeah. And we got ready for the Sunday.
But you've rebooked it.
Yes.
We've double checked the dates, triple checked the dates, quadruple checked the dates. So we're here.
And it's in the centre of town, well, almost in the centre of Nottingham. On the Goose, just around the corner from the Goose Fair site where we've parked. So just got to find. I've got a picture of where we're meeting. It seems very dodgy, by the tree.
You do take me to some sights, you do.
So let's see where we get to. So it's on one of the main roads into town. This is Rock Cemetery.
It's a massive cemetery, isn't it?
It is. We said for a long time that we ought to just have a wander around the cemetery itself, haven't we?
Yeah, there must be some amazing, interesting headstones in there.
Yeah.
It must be the biggest in Nottinghamshire, I would have
thought so, yeah. But we might find a bit of history to go with this anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some famous people buried in here, or if not famous,
infamous
or historical and hysterical.
It's what I give up, and then I say we can do them in the week.
A couple of pictures at Rock Cemetery.
Yeah.
Back in the days when windmills were on the hill.
That first picture we looked at is just out there.
We started again
That's
in
looking
22.
over the city from the top of the hill over there. Again.
Changed a bit.
That's
Look, you can see where the wall comes out, look.
yeah.
Right. And then you can see actually where it ended. Which is about here. So it came to here.
And that was the mortuary
That was the mortuary chapel.
Yeah.
So there are pictures of it, and it had a really lovely stained glass window on the end. But it's not the one that's in this picture.
Right.
That was a house. That was the Mills property.
So why was that taken down?
You'll find out later. You'll understand when I get further around.
And this is the gatekeeper's. It's not a house. It's built like a toll booth, and there's two entrances to the cemetery. One through here, and one through the gates we came in. But back in the day, they used to charge to come into the cemetery, and so it was the office, and it still is sort of the office and the mess, the rest room for the workers here. But whichever way you came in, you went past the window, so they could charge you.
That was even for putting flowers on the graves, wasn't
Yes, and some cemeteries used to sell you the flowers here as well. So
I'm a bit worried about this. What goes on in this cemetery? Pampas grass.
two pampas grass.
Now, if you don't know the story about pampas grass, or you do know the story about pampas grass, comment below.
And one of the only complaints we ever got repeatedly was nobody could hear me very well. And the next stop you will understand why. So hello, my name's Alan. You've met Sarah who's give you a torch. The most important member of the crew is Phil. Do not get behind Phil on the catacombs, or we'll see you on the next tour. Why we have a Phil. Okay? So welcome to Church Cemetery. Now when I say that, lots of people tend to get confused because you all know it as rock. Well, it was a concept in 1850 by a group of rich individuals in Nottingham and they were going to buy a plot of land and build the biggest church the city had seen on here. Then they decided they wanted to buy a plot of land and make money, so they decided to build a cemetery. And that only came into, they only were allowed to do that because the Land Act meant you could buy land for another reason, and that's how it's written. Because before then, towns, villages, churches, farms, roads, that's all you could buy land for. And then of course, lots of people moved into cities, churchyards filled up, what do you do with the dead? So they had to literally change the law so people could buy land to actually create a cemetery that was not connected to a religion or a church. So the company actually formed in 1851, and it formed with £5,250 made of 1,000 shares sold at 5 guineas each. Okay. Originally they were going to have, where's it gone? No, it's alright. That's all. Originally they thought they were going to buy 9 acres, eventually they had 13 acres. It was opened on the 18th of June 1856 when the Bishop of Lincoln came to consecrate it. That's a 5-year gap. And the 5-year gap that is there because this was a quarry and it had 3 windmills and their associated buildings on it that had to go before they could open it as a cemetery. So the first funeral was a 10-month-old boy called Taylor Buxton on the 20th of June 1856. You can get in here today, but only if you own a plot. You can't purchase a plot to get in. But the bit that I like, the interesting bit, is just outside the gates. So just outside the gates is where Nottingham had its gallows. Okay? Now if you look on a map and it says gallows, it means there would have been a permanent structure there. If it says place of execution, they could have just erected something, done whatever they were doing and taken it away. But because it says gallows, there would have been a permanent thing. I've recently been to the Galleries of Justice, and that is what they're saying is Gallows Hill, not the castle. Okay? Which makes even more sense that they had a permanent structure here. Anybody been to Beamish Museum?
Yeah.
You go to Beamish, you get on Stephenson's rockets, and they have a gibbet, which is a post, a little spar, and a cage hanging from it. The Galleries of Justice has Nottingham's gibbet pieces there. And there was somebody in that for 40 years. Okay, so the pieces of metal that held the body, and that's in the Galleries of Justice. So there would have been a permanent structure there. So it could have been somebody in that gibbet, a head on a spike, a hand or a foot nailed on a post. And the last person to be executed there was a chap called William Wells, who was convicted of robbery on the 2nd of April 1827. After that it went to the Galleries of Justice, and then the last public execution in Nottingham was, oh, it's gone out my head. I think it was 86, so it was 1886. I don't think it was 1856, it might have been 56 or 86, because I've been saying numbers, it's just flown out. When you get to my age, it does. And 10,000 people attended. Okay? And the reason public executions ended, not because people were squeamish to watch it, is because they gambled on everything. Alright? How did they get to their execution? What was the performance? When they were executed, if they were hung, did an eye pop, did the tongue pop? What happened down below? And I'm not going to go any further, but have any of you been to York Museum? Now if you go into their basement, where Dick Turpin was, they used to have a chart on the wall that was a gambling chart, an original gambling chart that mentioned everything. But it was here, on the wall. And then they realised that when teenagers went to it, they would shout up and down the corridors what they could read about what happened down below, especially with a man. That got embarrassing. So now when you go, you will see a box and it says adults only on it, and it's literally up there. So unless you're a tall lady, you can't actually read the thing to open it, but all the blokes open it because they're curious, and then they start laughing, and then the kids come and they shut it. So if you ever go in there and you see somebody suddenly shut the doors, they've read that out. The French took it to the extreme, and recently there's been a painting for sale, and they've got time travellers, because it looks like they're holding tablets, and the people at the front have got parchment and the lip readers. There'll be 10 people, their head will get chopped off, and they roll right down what the lip said, and you'd be surprised how accurate, or how everybody thought they were saying the same thing. So that's what the French did. They literally, and then they'd sell them, this is what the last words were. So the people on the front of French executions were lip readers. Now if you all turn around and look at that memorial behind you, it is not broken. It was made that way. When this cemetery opened, most people couldn't read and write. So if you've been down one of the old streets where they've got the signs up, the cobblers, the glassers, the butchers, the bakers, memorials were made basically the same. So if you can read that, it says this is a Masonic person whose life was cut short. If it's got a vase on the top, they lived a good life. If it's got things coming out of it, they lived the life of milk and honey. And a really tall one, they lived a long and fruitful life. There are other things you can see, and I do talk about another one further round, but that one basically says Masonic person's life cut short. And we've got an awful lot of those in this cemetery. There's another little black one down there when we go past.
Your dad would have been interested in that.
Yeah, my dad would do, wouldn't he?
Oh, no. I'll go that way.
For those of you who don't know, we've said in previous videos, Keith's dad was a mason, so you would have really found that interesting.
Yeah. And another one just down there.
So, but in 2019, the last full-size memorial, which is just a normal headstone, was erected, and it's just over that wall. It's getting a bit dirty now because it's a white marble headstone. So that was the last memorial that we've added additional inscriptions, but the last one to be stood up as a new memorial was just over that wall, and it's white. Just see it over there. So there's only 2 other cemeteries in Europe that's like the Rock, where you can actually be buried above and below somebody. So there's 2 other cemeteries in Europe that are the same. The Italians and some other countries, I don't know if France, they actually construct buildings where they've got coffins in structures, but they're not actually cemeteries, they're just places to store coffins and everything. Can't remember what they call them. Recently in the news, one in Italy, the wall had collapsed and you could see all the coffins and floors all hanging out of it, which wasn't very good. So, if you'd have been here 1798 to 1802, you'd have been well and truly underground in the Bunter sandstone mine. Alright? But the material that they were after, they kept going for it, and they kept taking the pillars out, or they would cave the roof in. Now, we've actually got evidence of why that would happen, because we cannot today go in the Robin Hood's cave, and you'll see shortly when we get there. After about 4 of them died and several were injured, the wives wrote to the Lord Mayor of Nottingham and asked him to do something about it. And being a pragmatic person, he came along with several barrels of black powder, drilled all the pillars and blasted the roof off to turn it into an open cast mine. The only evidence that we've got of that, if you look at that pillar over there past the cherry tree, you can see lots of black spots on it. Okay, between the crosses, can you see them? They're about this big and about that deep, so they started drilling that pillar to put the black powder in to blow it up. You'll see it as we get closer. The only reason they didn't finish drilling it and blowing it up is because the miller wanted to lose his floor. So the only reason we today have Robin Hood's cave is because it was the miller's floor as part of the mine. If it hadn't been, it wouldn't be there today. So yeah, so this is Robin Hood's cave. If you look to the right as we approach, you can see a really nice clean crack, and you can see the cave. Recent frost damage. So don't walk up to this bit, because as you can see above, we've had a bit of frost damage, and you look inside, the frost has brought several pieces down. As you can see, it's all loose on the floor and it looks cleaner and brighter. So we've had the ivy taken off the front, but the frost, because we've had some really strong frosts, it's just gone in and chipped it off. And when you go inside and you look at the thing past there, on the other side, because I went in and took the photographs, there's a big crack runs across these 2. So unfortunately I can't take you in there today because we don't know. Hopefully the engineers are going to come out. So this is a piece of that from inside, and this is what they were after, folks. Have a touch. You need to touch, because you need to tell me what you're feeling. What's it feel like?
Very smooth, very fine.
Very smooth, fine sand. So this is what they were after, folks. This is what they were quarrying out. This is what made them the money. We know it's desert sand, so where was the desert? So 35 to 65 million years ago, Nottingham was a shallow sea. And just down the road in Leicester was a desert. Alright? So this is what they were after. And I picked this up just to show you. Because until you actually see this, it amazes people. This is the stone that's just dropped from up there. That's why they kept falling it on their heads, and that's why the frost brought it down, because it's that soft. I can crush it with my hand and my fingers. So, shallow sea, blown from a desert, and we're making sand. Now, if I'd have taken you in that side and you look up, there's a circular opening, and that circular opening was actually the well for the mill, so they actually dug out the miller's well hole, so we don't know. And if I could take you in that end, I could take you to the very end of the mine. But until we've had the engineering, I'm sorry, I can't take you in. And in 2019, we had a fall in that side, and I was never allowed the whole of 29 to let anybody in. But if you look on that side, see if the torch can get to it. It just goes to there, look, and that's the end of the mine. Look where my torch is shining. So hopefully the engineer will come in and tell us it's okay. But yeah, that's the end of the mine up there. Just looks like this further in. And it's only here. The rumour is this is Robin Hood's cave. Robin Hood came to rescue. So now the interesting thing is we've actually got people on the tour who have actually got relatives in this cemetery today. And believe it or not, I think both the relatives are actually on the tour. So the tour started because Nottingham hosted the conference for the people that did caving, proper caving, that was the roles that people get stuck in. And they asked, and we showed them this one, and we showed them, why don't we let people in? So if all I did was show you this in the catacombs, it would be a very uninteresting tour, really. So things of interest from Robin Hood to the catacombs, and we'll go this way. Really, in comparison, we've got some really famous people in here. But the reason I picked this one, this is the resting place of a chap called Thomas Fish, and there's quite a lot of the Fish family here. But Thomas is the founder of the Thomas Fish Building Company, that only stopped being the Thomas Fish Building Company when a chap called Czech White bought it in 2008. Now when I first started doing this, I read the name Czech White and thought it was an American. I actually had people on tour, I've actually had people on tour that went to school with him in Clifton. So he is Nottingham born and bred as well, so it's stayed in Nottingham. But that isn't why this one's interesting. This one is interesting because this has got 7 coffins in it. It was dug for 7, and it is a 16-foot deep grave. You are not a grave digger in this cemetery, you are a mason. I'm 6 foot tall, so if you go there, that's 3 foot. So there's another 13 foot in this stone dug to put them in. So how many of the others have dug that deep in rock? Because it's not soil, yeah, it's rock. The next one I'm going to talk about is that really fancy cross up just below the angel on our side of the wall. Can you all see that fancy one? So who recognises the name Sir Frank Bowden? Sir Frank Bowden, anybody? So he was a property magnate in Hong Kong, didn't feel very well and didn't trust the doctors there, so he came back home to England and went to the doctor, who gave him one look and went, gave him 3 to 6 weeks to live. But what he recommended he do is take up this newfangled hobby of riding a bicycle, so he went and bought one on Raleigh Street. So the founder of Raleigh Bicycles, ashes are interred there with the rest of his family, and he lived to be into his 70s, so the doctors got it wrong. Now then, we know glass, we know bicycles, what else is Nottingham famous for?
Lace.
So let's have a look at a lace merchant. Thomas Butler Cuts. Is that who you said?
Yeah, that's right.
Now this one's really interesting because if you put Thomas Butler Cuts into the internet, the very first that comes up it says he's a criminal. illegally sold lace machines to the French. That's his dad. So our Thomas was a bit of an inventor, and he must have been fairly rich in his day, but this, I mean, this doesn't show anything that he was rich at all, does it? But he didn't pay the stamp duty of £100 in 1874 for one of his inventions. So either machinery had superseded it, or he was that wealthy he didn't care. But that's that. Now the next one, I'm going to ask you what you think he did for a living. Because you cannot get a photograph like this now, because the Civic Society pestered his family to put a plaque on. So this is pre-plaque. You should remember it. But yeah, what do you think he did for a living? Come on. Nobody said what I said. Come on, what do you think? Well, I said blacksmith. So if you follow me, and I'm quite easily, I can walk backwards, but watch you looking. So this is Thomas Chambers Hinds, architect. Nottingham Great Northern Railway Station 1857, he restored the castle 1875 to 78, and is the architect that built the high school. And he built hundreds of churches. And if you look at his churches, at the end of one every apex there's one of these. And I think he just built churches to put them on them. Because when you actually put his name in the World Wide Web and stuff, the list of churches just literally 2 or 3 pages full. And the Civic Society didn't like the fact that nobody knew who were there, so they pestered and pestered and pestered and pestered. Eventually the member of the family that kept saying no passed away, and they managed to get the plaque put on.
Some amazing memorials there are. And for cemeteries around here, a lot of them are still upright. Yes. Ashworth. Robert Ashworth. Robert Ashworth. So,
Could I be buried here? I've got a family name.
we've got an Ashworth there. There was a butler up there.
Yeah.
That's your mum's maiden name, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So this one didn't used to be on my list, but I used to stand here and pause. There's one round the corner we go to before we go in the catacombs, and everybody would look at this and then start asking me questions, so I thought I'd better get some answers. So this one here is the resting place of a chap called Anthony John Mundella. Often I hear school or hospital when I say that name. He was born in Leicester, became Lord Mayor of Nottingham, then an MP for Sheffield. Parliament hated him because he was a reformist and tried to get rid of him by splitting Sheffield in two, thinking neither half would want him. Both sides tried to have him as an MP because he was good at reform. Well, what he did was good. One of the pieces of legislation that he brought in that Parliament hated, and this is how it reads, is that women and children could only be made to work a 10-hour day. Us blokes could still work 36, but women and children could only be made to work a 10-hour day. Now, if any of you have ever visited one of these old factories, and when you get in, the clock cards are on the wall at the side of the machine, that's what his legislation brought about. Because you clocked in at the machine and you didn't leave until they'd made you work your 10-hour day to clock out. They weren't clocking you in at the door and you sauntering there for 10, 15, 20 minutes. You clocked in and you got your 10 hours at the machine. And that's what it did bring lots of other things in, but that one. So think about it, in Victorian times you could only make a woman and a child work for 10 hours. What did they do before then? How did people live? Wouldn't be really much of a tour in this cemetery without coming and seeing our Edwin. Edwin Patchett was one of the founder members. He was a Nottingham solicitor and he owned most of the land that side of Mansfield Road. Edwin is down as one of the founder members. He was also the clerk for the Church Cemetery Company. His name is down as the architect for the cemetery, so all the naming of it, all the layout of it and the construction of it as a cemetery is down to Edwin. His name is also down as the architect for the mortuary chapel that was no longer there, because in the 60s again government legislation came along that said every building had to have rates paid on it, even if it was empty. So that's why English Heritage went mad in the late 60s, early 70s, because councils started decking and people started flattening buildings that they didn't want to pay rates for. There was nobody in it, they weren't making any money, they weren't going to pay themselves rates because where did they get the money from? So they knocked them flat, and that's probably when the mortuary chapel went missing off the end of the building in the 60s. if they would have shrunk the building down so they only paid rates on what they were needed.
He just added a little comment. Edwin was a solicitor. Look at the size of the plot.
I love the old Christian names. Cornelius
James.
So we're armed with torches, and now we're going in the catacombs.
Like I say, simple Snapchat. If you look on the floor, you can see literally where the water runs. And if you walk on it, you don't fall in it. Because if you're on this side and you step back, voice of experience is one of those victory places. So if you follow me down, and you walk this, you'll not fall off that way.
You feel it soft and you think, yeah.
It's like walking on a beach.
This is where I'm going to use some reverse psychology on you. You didn't know you were going to get asked questions and you didn't know you were going to be a part of a psychological test, did you? So, brickwork in a stone tunnel. Can we all see it? So, did they dig their way down or did they burst up and out? What do we think? Down. Table. Normally everybody says where I say last, but it's working about 50-50 at the minute. So the company rolls state that somebody digging one of the graves up there, which we will be walking past later, fell through and broke his leg. Bearing in mind it's one of the early graves, so what did people think was down below, and what went through his mind when he went through?
Hell.
Anybody been in any real catacombs?
Yeah.
So have you seen any bones in this one yet? So if you go into a real catacombs, you're definitely going to see bones, and you'll probably see memorials carved on the side of the wall. As you can see, there's nothing here. And if you go into real catacombs, you normally have to pay, and you go in a big door, and it's really cramped, just enough space to probably carry a coffin. Because in Europe, what they do with their catacombs is they bury the body, then give it a bit of time for all the flesh to come off, then dig the big bones up, which is normally the arms, the legs and the skull, then take them in the catacomb, then really use that land for another burial. So up until the New Age travellers, both Robin Hood and this were open, people could just walk through. The only evidence that we have of making anything secure is in the ceiling here, and on the sides, and just behind you, young man, is a slot where they could have put a frame in for a door. Now you all saw what I did with that stone. This would be the same. So if there'd have been a structure in here and the door opening and shutting, these would be round and chop marks. So they never actually put a structure in here because it's too clean. It's like they only did it the other day.
This bit's not very thrilling for you viewers. It's all dark.
And it's going down.
Close, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, and torches off. Torches off. It don't work if you don't turn your torch off. Somebody's got the phone on, look. You drop it all in the back area, go ahead, that's what you've come to look at. And as you can see, that would make a really nice family chamber, but there's nothing making it secure on the outside. So who's into Disney songs and what Disney song are we in? And I gave you a clue earlier about the dates. So what was Nottingham 35 to 65 million years ago? Nottingham. So we're under the sea. And I suppose none of you ladies have ever put anything called makeup on your faces. So if you haven't, you need to touch that there.
These are candle
Or this on this
holes
side here.
with little chimneys.
You need to touch it. Right, you need to touch it. You really put makeup on, you need to touch it. That, ladies, is full of earth. which is the most inert substance known to man, and it is what your makeup is made of. So when you put face powder, the base of your face powder is full of earth. The military use it to catch chemical warfare. That's how good it is. Come along a bit further, another opening inside, with more candles, roots growing through the ceiling and all in the back. Go and have a look. So yeah, every time you put face cream on or anything like that, you've got some full of earth in there. So do we have any miners or ex-miners on the tour? Well, fortunately, I had miners and ex-miners on the tour, so the next bit is knowledge from miners, not me. So if you follow me through when you have a look there, we can talk about how this is all made.
Roots growing through.
Yeah. There's various chambers off.
Is that everybody feel? Yeah. So you've all heard the word grafter. And some of you at work have thought, yeah, I'm a grafter today. Well, this is what a grafter does. There's two versions here. So the grafter's the one that works against the stone and takes the sides out, and then takes the bottom out. Then they leave and the harvesters come in. This is called 5 fingers, and fortunately for us, they didn't harvest this. So at the end of every one of these tunnels, there's some form of this. So the miners told me this, that's what the grafters did. Now, you've heard about miners working a 12-inch seam, but they preferred to work an 18-inch seam. You've heard that, yes? Well, some of you might, some of you haven't. So when you hear a miner discussing working, they like to work an 18-inch seam, they're talking about something this high, level going in up to 200 metres that way, getting the coal out, and it would be pit propped up. If it went down to a 12-inch seam, that's when the kids went in, because men couldn't lay on the side and swing the pit. So that's when you get when you hear miners talking about working a narrow seam. It's that way, and they're on the back going in and bringing the coal out. All right. So they're the grafters. So if you think you've been a grafter, think about this next time when you think you're grafted. Okay. Fortunately, muck doesn't drop upwards. So if you point your torch up, technically this was done in 1856, and these marks look as fresh as they were made the day they were made. All right. So there's some daft graffiti on the wall, there's some funny graffiti, and I know when you see that because you'll laugh. There's 2 holes in the wall where they could have had candles, and a tiny piece of metal about as big as the end of your little finger in the ceiling that probably had a hook for a lamp. This is what you've come to see, folks. Go explore, and I'm here if you've got any questions.
Is that open? I did not originally. Now locked.
So we just left now. So where, obviously where candles be.
And then I'll explain what we do. When we have 2 ex-travellers living here, because this here is where they had a fire pit, and they wouldn't allow it to carry on.
So come the nuclear holocaust.
This is where we're coming to, is it?
I've touched the walls before, sorry.
Soft, sandy, aren't they?
Damp as well.
Yeah.
It's round the Vietnam and Korean War, when people wanted freedom and do what they wanted. They wanted to do it without paying taxes. So lots of community groups started then. Now we call them some of them are still going today. You know, where people want to live outside the bounds of society. Yeah. And this is what we hear, unfortunately.
So he's saying that New Age travellers lived here in the 70s.
And for the very first time when we came today with water, I've never seen water in, well, I've been here 2016.
Some of the graffiti, I need a poo. So this was the toilet area.
So he's saying they've never had water in here before. It's been so wet. This is the first time we've ever seen water dripping in here.
So we've not had anybody keen on this one. Several tours we've had people scouring it looking for the piece of metal, and it's just here. And it is little, like I said. And if you imagine this had a hook on it for a lamp, and that opening where the arrow slit was open, and they had a pit pony working, the pit pony would come in with its truck, turn itself round, because this area is big enough for a pit pony to turn its truck round, and then it would probably stop under the lamp, because that's what pit ponies were trained to do. They would literally walk down the dark tunnel looking for the light, and when they got to the light, they'd stand under the light, and then wait till be told to move on. And that's what the miners said that is probably there for. Because if you imagine the carts here, when they brought everything down, and then all you've got to do is trundle out the door. Any questions? So one of the questions I get asked is, when were these dug? Only evidence of anything that I've got is on this wall here. Because we've got a scratching which is graffiti in its own right. And when I shine my torch in a certain way, you can see that that reads 1877. So that was scratched in after the cemetery opened. There is lots of stuff like this all over. We'll just leave it. I would like to get this dug out and see what else is on the walls on this side, because that would have been some of the older stuff scratched in. But yeah. Any questions before we go back up the top? So when you walk back up, if you scan your torch either side of the wall, you will see that the strata mirror, when we get so far up, the strata literally mirror images itself on the wall. Okay? And I'll see you at the top. It's the red line of brick on that side, what? Red line of stone on that side, the red line on the side of the video.
Date.
Yeah, I've just seen it there. Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? All the scratching, you know, how it's been chipped out, and then the fuller's earth, and the. It is. And then the desert. No.
Over there yet, Phil?
Yeah, all there.
So where we're going to go to next is called St Anne's Valley. When it was designed for the rich of the rich of the rich. And I'm going to go and stand on why the rich of the rich of the rich are no longer buried in there. And we now actually have paupers buried in here. William Patchett would not have allowed paupers in. The whole idea with the cemetery was to make money. Paupers don't tend to make money. They just break even for the digging. So what am I standing on, folks? A well cap. So what don't you bury the dead in? Water. You're not going to pay to have the relatives buried in a puddle. So the guys probably were digging a grave, probably discovered water, probably, hey look, I found water, which you can just about see with the arches over there. Look how fancy they look. They're totally different stone to this down here. So I think the arches were built to become family chambers, and this ruined it. Because nobody would pay to come in here anymore. Just wouldn't do it. So I'm going to do a bit more reverse psychology on you, with really mean psychology. Where do you think that arrow slit was? Did we go uphill? No, we didn't.
Downhill. No. Cool. Water. Yeah.
Arrow slit. So you look at this semicircular quarry. So you've got one quarry connected with a tunnel, and then you've got tunnels that run into it, and then at the back of it you've got another opening. Ooh. Catacombs, or were they just quarrying? The company rolls state that there was £1,500 to £2,000 in Victorian days for the construction of catacombs. So then we'll come to one of the sadder sections of the cemetery. These were never standing up. All these stones were made to lay flat. The evidence of that is if you expose the very bottom, the date of the year is on the bottom. So if they were stood up, they would literally, that would be in ground to actually hold the stone up. This one and this one has got 30 children in it. This is a Church of England churchyard. To get in here you would have to be baptised. The very top one was 5 minutes old. And these two are cholera years, 1920. So we had the war, which decimated the population, because literally lots of farmers died, so they literally didn't have people growing crops. Then we had the Spanish flu. And do people know why it was called the Spanish flu?
They were the first country to report it, weren't they, or name it?
It's actually been released from the Information Acts of America. The Americans brought it over. Spain was neutral. Name it after a neutral country and they won't start pointing fingers. If you go on YouTube, they actually show you the barracks where it started. They didn't know about things like we do back in the First World War, so they started recruiting in America, and hundreds started dying of a cough and a sneeze. They would take them out and bury them and bring other people into the same buildings with the same blankets and the same beds. Thousands of Americans died before they actually got to be trained or actually come to war. They'd send a ship over with 3,000 soldiers. You'd be lucky if half of them got to land in France to help fight the war. It was all hushed up, and that's why it was called the Spanish flu. It's one of the biggest secrets really of the First World War. Thousands of American soldiers died of the flu before they even got here, and then they brought it to us. But this was cholera. Now cholera Nottingham used to miss because of its clean water, because it's filtered through all this rock. But in 1920 you'd had all that go off, then lots of people coming into the city for work, and then we had a drought, and who's at the bottom of the thing? Children. So where did they get the water from? Wherever they could find it, hence the cholera. Right. The war memorials we have in here is the War Graves Commission. If they find an unmarked grave, they will put a stone up. They do all their research, and it can take up to 2 years, and sometimes you'll notice, you'll think that's got clean, because they go round and clean them. But the people that look after them hate the stone. It's really soft stone, so they're constantly re-engraving. But once it gets too deep or they can't do it anymore, they commission a new one. So all of a sudden you'll see them put a replacement in, and that will happen indefinitely because that's what the government pays for. So for them to be here, they died here, unless they were rich, and you wouldn't have one of them on a rich grave, you'd have a big one. Because we bury our dead where they die. That's why there's English soldier graves in every country of the world, because we've been in every country of the world. Only the Americans pay billions to bring their dead back home. All on your doorstep. So, catacombs. We know they put money to one side, but there's never been any remains in here. But did they really think about it? Now, if you're going to have something built, you'd specify it, yeah? You know, you're going to have 500 cupboards, 600 cupboards, 450 cupboards, yeah? Know how many doors you're going to have? So as we walk back up and start following me, remembering that groove when we get so far up, when we get to here, look, if we've got a specification, why does the ceiling go up another 4 foot? And that's why the thought that fell through, because he thought he got another 4 foot before he hit the bottom. You never know. So not only did they dig the ceiling, when we get further up here, look, not only have they took the ceiling away, they took the sidewall. And at this side, they've not done it once, they've done it twice. Not the best time of the day, but if you're squeezed up to me like we did when we turned the torches off, don't go too far past me, I'll reveal something spectacular to you. So you've got to keep squeezing up, just like we did at the bottom, but don't go too far. And it's a bit bright this morning, but not to worry. So keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. Turn round, shine your torches that way. Doesn't it look churchy? So who do we know recently got buried in something similar to a catacomb? And we all know her. The Queen. So the only sort of catacombs we have in this country are under churches and chapels and cathedrals, yeah? And I think that's why there's nobody in here. Because who do you know that's buried in catacombs? I don't think they could sell the concept of catacombs to the people of Nottingham. Because if you've ever been in any catacombs, that shelf there on your left looks like a catacomb shelf. But if I was to say to you, hey, give us 1,500 quid and we'll put your granddad's coffin on there, that'll be fine, yeah? With no fastening on either end. You're not going to say yes to that in Victorian times, because you know in 3 days' time somebody's going to be walking down Maid Marian Way with your granddad's suit on. And I think that's why these are empty. They couldn't sell it to the people because they didn't fully understand what they were trying to sell them. If they'd have made them into family niches to put coffins in, where you could seal them up, they might have sold it. But to try and sell them as catacombs, because when you think about it, if you actually look at them, it's just stacks of bones or private niches. The only thing it had ruined today, because even today they're thinking about converting these into places where we could put bodies or ashes, is just stop me having toilets. So then I'm going to talk about this one over here. Now this one over here has got somebody's wife. He came back from the First World War because he survived. He married his 18-year-old childhood sweetheart. And then we don't know why, but he took her to Spain for his honeymoon, where she died of Spanish flu and he brought her back. Part of the agreement with that memorial was there would be fresh flowers put on that grave every month, which happened until 1976 when he passed away, and that is written up, and he didn't remarry, and that is written up in a St Mary's church. There's 3 in Nottingham and I don't know which one it is, but if you go in one of the St Mary's churches and you read about a chap losing his childhood sweetheart and the flowers, it's that grave there. So what I'm talking about is this one here. Now right at the beginning I pointed you the headstone that was snapped, well it looked snapped but it was made that way. So then we come to this one. Now most people in 1870 something couldn't read or write. The ones that could read this, and they would read that both of them got to 64 in 1870 something. But we know it's a something because the number after the 7's missing. Alright? But that doesn't tell you as much as that one does. So when you look up there, you've got an hourglass that's empty. Behind the hourglass there are 2 ripened wheat sheaves. Alright? So for those of us who can read, both got to 64. For those of us that can't read, they both lived to a ripe old age. So in 1870 something, being 64 was a ripe old age. And the word to look for if you ever Google it is iconography, and there's whole reams of it. So you all saw the brickwork in the tunnel, and I said it was holding up possibly 4 graves. Well, these are the 4. The pile of stone, the one either side of it, and this black one here. Now the reason I say it could be possibly them, I think it's the pile of stones. Now when you pace from one gate to the other, you get a 19 and a 17 to the beginning of it. It's very difficult because of the memorials to actually do that pacing, so it's definitely somewhere here. It could be this one, it could be that one, it could be both these or this one. But this is where we were digging when he fell through. So what you didn't realise is you walked under that full row of burials when you walked through that tunnel. Now you can see why the rich of the rich were going to be buried here, because bringing somebody down to look on something like this would have been spectacular. This would have been a swanky, you know, bragging moment. Oh, Granddad's over there, you know. You all saw when you were in there how quiet it was. So you've seen one famous Nottingham architect. Do we know the name of another one? That's the one. So it was born Fothergill Watson in Mansfield, Nottingham, 1841. He was the son of a wealthy Nottingham lace merchant, Robert Watson, and Mary Ann Fothergill. He changed his name to Watson Fothergill in 1892 to continue his maternal family name, which is really good, but he only had daughters. So it was mum, him, done. And there he is. So you create a cemetery to make money, and you start selling all your plots off, and you start running out of plots. What do you do?
So you fill the paths.
So in the Victorian era, doctors and scientists were trying to work out what the human body was. And people would dig your grandma, your granddad, and your mum, or your sister up. So if that's the worst crime that could happen in a cemetery, and damaging a memorial is the second, what's the third, what's the second worst thing? So sticking the body's one, damaging the memorial's three, what's number two? That's number three. Pointing at the one at the back. We've had about 4 or 5 people actually give the answer. You should know the answer, you might not remember. So if you look at the one on the back, it's got bits missing, because somebody's stolen all the 4 corner pillars. They've not just vandalised it, they've stolen from it. So last year I had a lady that literally did quotations for stonework as her job for insurance claims. To replace those 4 pillars in today's money would be 40 grand. Just for 4 little marble pillars. So somebody somewhere's got a really fancy gateway and they nicked it from that memorial. Breaking it's bad enough, but stealing from somebody? And where are we? So who's into beer? Okay, so who's into Shipston's beer?
Shipston's one of the brewing family of Nottingham.
When we showed him another James Shipston, and one of the rare times we've been on a tour when it's been wet. If you come here when it's wet and you look at that memorial, if that memorial is wet, it looks like it's just been broken. It's made that way. The stonemason that did the top of that must have been an artist, because when it's wet, you know when you break a stick of rock and it shines, that shines like it's just freshly broken. It's amazing. So he was an artist.
So we've switched to phone because the camera batteries died. No, the phone batteries, no, the camera batteries died. We're almost at the end of the tour anyway. Just look at the size of these memorials.
No blinking. No blinking. No blinking. Already gone past pictures. Yeah. 3 years. No blinking. So as we're walking back down, something to keep your mind interested. What do you think the biggest piece of stone is that we walk past as we go this way? Because there's some big pieces of stone, there's some big memorials. Most of them are sectional. I don't know where they go. Arthur, in brackets Billy, the dear only son of Frank and Florence Furness, probably had half a dozen daughters, who passed away November the 4th, 1920, cholera year, aged 9 years and 6 months. You're rich, you put that on your son, you're poor, it goes in with 29 of them. So this points something else out that people don't realise. The only reason that 99.9% of these memorials are here is that.
This is going to be wobbly, sorry. The tour's finished, but there's a couple of bits we want to go back and look at. There's one bit the guide said, take tissues with you. You're going to go back or and have a look. But there was an interesting bit that I don't think we caught on camera because I think the battery had about run out there.
I think we were a bit far away from him as well.
Yeah.
So we'll go back and reiterate it.
But I think I've remembered what he said. Keith's got no faith in me. What did you just say?
You just need to find it.
Oh god, you're a bit close. Hold on a minute, I need to zoom out. That's better.
The other thing you were saying about these are all the rich people with these mausoleums or monuments, but they're very close together, and there could be plots for 7, 8 people in there. So they just go down.
Yeah.
And they're saying that the grave diggers are very clever of hiding the doors to get into the down there. But,
otherwise, big grave robbers, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
But one thing that he said that I've never really thought before is that when you see memorials like this, they're built, paid for by the heart, not the head, because if you start thinking about the cost of them, you won't be paying for them. So they were built out of love, or paid for out of love, rather than.
The other thing, look at the design. They're very. There's a lot very similar.
Yeah, with the pillars.
Pillars into the. There's another one there,
and
then this one here. So whether
that was
that
line over there.
Yeah, the trendy.
I suppose
A bit of snobbery. Well, if you've got that, I want it. Or good salesmanship from the building them.
Where the green hut is where the last remaining windmill. If you remember way back at the beginning of the video, there were pictures that said there were windmills on this site. Well, this is the site of the last remaining windmill, and just over here somewhere, if we can find it, it's virtually in line. It's quite decorative. In fact, I think it's down here. Is that it? Oh, it's smaller than I thought, but we've all said that, haven't we?
Very decorative.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But this is the miller's assistant. So he worked there as an assistant. This is his gravestone, which is quite ornate and for a miller's assistant. So we're not sure. He wasn't sure who paid for it, whether it was the miller. But the cemetery still has a windmill. If you can see the engraving on the stone.
So it said there's no way a miller's assistant would be able to afford a grave
In here.
In this cemetery. So he's obviously well thought of by his employer, the mill owner. Well, this one
is Oscar Joseph, third son of James and Elizabeth, who died December 17th, 1872, aged 11 weeks.
And Edwin Loverseed, seventh son, died August 1883, aged 1 day. It's bad enough losing one child, isn't it?
Okay.
And then there's one over here. Arthur Huskinson, the beloved child of Joseph and Emma Mason, who died August 13th, 1879, aged 11 months. And the guide was saying about how heartbreaking some of these were, and that he'd only ever managed to read 3 of them without having to walk away because he was in tears because of some of the words that were written by the Victorians. This one says, "Sweet little flower, thy bloom is fled, and thou art numbered with the dead. Short was thy stay with us below, and loath we were to let thee go." A lot of the gravestones are illegible because of the age of them, and he was saying that they're now up against the wall because when the groundskeepers were cutting the grass short, because the headstones were so small, they were just getting damaged. Gretchen Schilling, who died August 15th, 1878, aged 2 years. As we said earlier in the video, we've driven past so many times that we should have a walk round here. It's a massive cemetery. You see some strange surnames. John Henry Daft. Only young. Again, age 23. Well, this is a memorial because he died in London and was interred in Hoxton churchyard. Hoxton, that's another part of Nottinghamshire, isn't it? Hoxton.
But this rest of the family around the other side here.
Also Mary, infant daughter of the above, aged 4 months. 2 years and 9 months. 10 months.
Six and a half years.
We'll have a wander a little further down, but I don't just want to be showing you lots of graves. And here's one. This is quite a big one. Louisa something. This is quite a big grave, actually, isn't it? Only child of the above, who died on the 9th something, 1914, age 66. So it wasn't a child grave. I was thinking that was a child grave.
Child graves. Another one here. 5.5 months.
Wander around down to this white one, and that'll be it, I think, for here. Oh, this isn't a. Oh, this is an Imperial War grave, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Again, the guide was very interesting. He was saying about the Imperial War graves. They're always in this colour.
And this stone.
And they have to be cleaned quite often because they get so dirty. And they also wear quickly because of the stone. But they're always replaced. Once they start wearing, they replace them. So this was a staff nurse. VC Constantine, QA, IMP, MIL, Nursing, SCE, 6th of November 1918. But it's the government who pays for the Imperial War graves, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's in their mandate that they'll always
Maintain
them. pay for the upkeep of them. Something a bit different there for you. A while ago we asked on different forums that we're on Instagram, Facebook and on the community page on YouTube, if people would like us to show more of Nottingham and places in Nottingham. So this is one of them. But you know what we're going to say now. It's about time for a cup of tea. Or coffee. Thanks for watching. Bye.